In 1981, Walt Disney Productions purchased the film rights for a novel written by comedy author Gary K. Wolfe. It revolved around a cartoon rabbit named Roger. In 1985, the world's first computer-generated TV presenter made his debut. Beginning as an outspoken critic of corporations, he would later go on to be the official spokesman for New Coke. In 1989, the film Rain Man won 4 Oscars. It was nominated for 8 and made $400 million. These seemingly disconnected events are the reason that no good video game movie has ever been made. In our strange timeline, these disparate points of fact are about to converge in an abandoned cement factory in Wilmington, North Carolina. But the inciting incident occurs in 1990 in a lonely hotel room in Kyoto, where an independent filmmaker prepares a rather expensive box of tea for the 10th day in a row. Don't hang up, but this video isn't about the new Mario movie, it's about the old one. Did you know that it was actually the very first video game movie ever made? Not only that, but it turns out it's still affecting Hollywood to this day. I thought it'd be fun to explore exactly what the hell happened and why it took 30 years for Nintendo to try again. Super Mario Bros. Came out in 1993 and is the direct cause of why there are so few video game adaptations, and arguably no good ones, despite the fact that the video game industry is worth more than $400 billion. On Rotten Tomatoes, the only certified fresh video game film in history is for a game I've never heard of. The only remaining movies with a passing score are all CGI mascot films for children, with the coveted second place ranking going to the Angry Birds sequel. But it didn't have to be this way. Once upon a time, if you can believe it, Hollywood took risks. They spent money. They bought talent. But when the first video game adaptation doesn't even make half its budget back, it makes sense why they'd be hesitant to try again. What followed with year after year of cheap, low-budget cash-ins that aren't worth watching ironically? It would be another 8 years before a video game movie was given the same impressive budget that Mario was, and that was because it had Angelina Jolie's face on it. It also helped that the Tomb Raider movie exploited German tax loopholes to save about $87 million, but that's another story. Eat the rich. The 1993 Super Mario Bros. Film burnt a 30-year hole through the future of the film industry, and it's only now starting to heal. So what the hell happened? What went so wrong that Nintendo refused to do another live-action movie until Detective fucking Pikachu? The answer is simple. Everything. For its 3-year production, everything went wrong. Hello, I'm Hawkwood, and I've done more research for this video than I ever did for college. The year is 1990. Everyone is talking about this new fad called Internet that lets you connect one computer to one other computer. The World Wide Web doesn't exist yet because the Internet browser won't be released until next year. Meanwhile, in the world of gaming, Nintendo has released a total of 5 or arguably 6 mainline Mario games. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before video games made the jump to the big screen, and if anyone had the brand recognition and IPs to do it, it was Nintendo. They had already saved the video game industry itself from the crash of 1983, which is a whole other fucking story, but even I'm not that old. Now there were 2 distinct problems with making a video game movie. The first was, literally no one had done it before. There had been a few movies about video games, but not any direct adaptations of a video game property. The other problem was the story. There sort of wasn't one. Real quick, let's revisit the plot of each of those 5/6 Mario titles. 1. A plumber runs to the right, defeats some monsters pretending to be a turtle, and then finally defeats a real turtle. 2. Ditto Hard Mode. 2.5. Mario and his friends dream about kicking a frog's ass with vegetables. 3. Back to formula, but now there's kids. 4. Yoshi. 5.
In the distant land of Saras Aland, Princess Daisy has been kidnapped by an evil alien named Tatanga who can hypnotize humanity. Mario shoots down his fucking spaceship.
So to recap, the World Wide Web doesn't exist, and you've been tasked with being the first person ever to adapt an interactive adventure into a passive spectacle. It's your job to turn those 5 or 6 stories into a coherent narrative that will be enjoyed by children and adults alike, regardless of whether they've played the games before. And it's gonna need to sell toys. Where the hell do you even start? While the movie wouldn't come out until 1993, its production actually began in 1990. Nintendo had just finished a disappointing partnership with Hollywood where they had licensed their IPs for a movie called The Wizard, a film that starred a young Fred Savage and an even younger Power Glove. Nintendo had made money on the partnership, but at the cost of creative control over the narrative. Money didn't matter so much to Nintendo right now, since Mario 3 was about to earn them $500 million. And that's from US sales alone. So even when multiple production companies offered to buy the movie rights to Mario, each offering multiples of millions of dollars, Nintendo politely declined. If they were going to sell Mario's film rights, they wanted to know the movie would be something special, and they wanted to be involved. Enter the tragic hero of our story, Roland Joffe. Joffe, along with his business partner Jake Eberts, ran an independent production company called Light Motive, and they were looking to branch out. They wanted to be the ones to make a movie about the Super Mario Brothers. Joffe was well known for directing well-made, intense, gruesome films about sobering topics like genocide. So package that with his total lack of cash and you can see the uphill battle he was gearing up for. He didn't have the money that the big studios were offering, and he didn't have the big-named stars lined up to sign up. He didn't even have a script. What he did have was the guts to pull off a Sherlock-level outstanding move of 4D chess. So while all those multi-million-dollar pitches were flowing into the offices of Nintendo of America, Joffe skipped the line and flew his ass to Nintendo of Japan. He bought a box of the finest tea he could find at a Kyoto tea shop, then delivered it directly to the secretary of then Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi. The next day, he did it again. The next, again. This ritual continued for 10 days until Yamauchi finally agreed to meet with him. In the meeting, Joffe laid out everything he had, which was basically nothing. He had a storyboard and a story outline, but instantly clarified this won't be the story, and it'll be a story that contains some of these elements. All he really knew was that he wanted it to be live action and not just for kids. Now maybe it was the tea, or maybe it was the audacity, or maybe it was just that Hiroshi Yamauchi thought it would be funny to see how pissed all those big studios would be when the biggest name in video games fell into the lap of an independent studio. But for whatever reason, Joffe walked out of that office with the most coveted film rights in movie history. Though it probably helped that he gave away all the damn merchandising rights. Now stay with me here. Things are about to get a little weird. In order to move forward, we need to move back and meet an IRL savant named Kim Peek. Kim was born with birth defects that affected the structure of his brain. Traditionally, the left side and the right side of your brain are supposed to be connected in some very specific ways, and Kim Peek's sort of weren't. This led the neurons in his brain to do some very weird things, which resulted in him having superhuman memory. He could read books in an hour, reading both the left page and the right page at the same time using each eye individually. He could recount the full contents of more than 12,000 books. Unfortunately, it turns out that brain damage has its downsides, too. He didn't walk until he was 4, couldn't button his shirt, and had difficulty with even simple motor functions. His verbal skills weren't great either.
Think about yourself, Barry Morrow.
In 1984, a screenwriter named Barry Morrow met Kim Peek, and Barry was so inspired by his story that he wrote a screenplay loosely based on him. It was called Rain Man, and in 1988 it won all of the awards. As it should have. It's very good. Barry Morrow won the Oscar for Best Screenplay, the director won for Best Director, and Dustin Hoffman won for Best Actor. In the movie he looks like this, but you probably remember him looking like this. The whole point of telling you all this is because real life is weird sometimes. And just like Jaffe, known for violent real-world stories, was for some reason interested in the rights of a video game property, it turns out that the team of Rain Man was too. In 1989, a year before Jaffe secured the rights, Dustin Hoffman was trying to procure them as well. His intention was to star alongside Danny DeVito, with a script written by Barry Morrow, directed by the director of Rain Man. Now why the hell were all these Oscar winners reaching for the Super Mario Bros? Because their kids liked it. But a year later, when the rights went to Jaffe, the two groups agreed on an Avengers-level team-up. Jaffe would produce the film, and the Rain Man team would do the rest. None of them make it through production. What were we talking about again? Roland Jaffe and Barry Morrow agreed that what this movie needed to be was a prequel. This shouldn't be a film about super bros, it should be a film about bros becoming super. Jaffe wanted the film to capture a mix of American reality and Japanese myth. Barry didn't quite deliver. See, Barry Morrow had just won an Oscar for writing a film about Dustin Hoffman being one of two brothers on a road trip, and also one of them is a savant. So it made sense for him to think he had just been hired to do that again. So he did. The original draft of the Super Mario Brothers is long gone, probably shredded and thrown away and burned. In fact, Morrow wasn't even allowed to finish it before the production crew took it out of his hands. But from what Morrow can remember, it was about a ring falling into a drain, and the Mario Bros going in after it into the plumbing world. It was a draft full of silly events with an Oscar-worthy emotional relationship between the brothers. Everyone hated it. The producers hated it. Nintendo hated it. It was way too mature and had nothing to do with the games and was just another brother road trip movie, but with Luigi playing the savant. The crew called it Drain Man. The rest of the Rain Man crew wasn't faring much better. The director got dropped so fast, I'm not even going to tell you his name. In his place, Jaffe tried to hire Harold Ramis to direct. You probably know him as Dr. Egon Spengler.
Trent is dead.
But he also worked as a writer, director, or producer on practically all of the comedies of that era, including Animal House.
Thanks. I needed that.
And eventually, Groundhog Day.
Phil Connor, Ned?
Dude does good work. Ramis was a big fan of the games, so he took the meeting in order to say no in person. Oh well. As for the actor, poor Dustin Hoffman was fired as soon as Nintendo found out about him. The president of Nintendo of America didn't think he would make a good Mario. And no, he would not be elaborating. So at the end of 1990, the film had a bad script, no director, and no actor. If only they could fix all of that by hiring one guy, maybe an Emmy and Golden Globe Award winner who had been in the business since 1975 and had already shown interest in the rights. Somebody who actually looked like Mario. 1991 began with Danny DeVito set to star in and direct the movie currently called The Super Mario Bros. He even gave Nintendo permission to use his name in publications in order to pull in more talent. One such talent was Arnold himself. That's right, there exists a universe where Mr. Freeze and the Penguin team up again, reprising their roles in Twins to become enemies in The Super Mario Bros. Keeping with the theme of Batman, another option for Bowser was Michael Keaton. But we can't have nice things, so of course all of those deals fell through. Danny DeVito's name would stay attached to the film for the rest of 1991. He hadn't actually signed the contract or anything yet, but that's just because he wanted to read the script first. Oh. In the end, the Drain Man script was scrapped, Danny dropped out, and Roland Joffe had spent an awful lot of money on an awful lot of nothing. Desperate to have just anything, Joffe reached out for a new lead. He was approached by a comedy actor named Thomas Jeffrey Hanks. Tom had done some great movies in the past and agreed to take the title role of Mario for $5 million. It was a bit of a high price since Joffe had only paid $2 million for the damn movie rights in the first place. It also didn't help that Hanks's last film was The Bonfire of the Vanities, which bombed so hard it only made a third of its budget back. So you can't really blame Joffe and co. when they decided that Tom Hanks just didn't have what it takes to lead a great film, even if that decision would age rather poorly in the next 3 years. Much later, he would be reconsidered for the part of Luigi, but I don't have a mushroom for Luigi, so you're just gonna have to use your imagination. Back before Hollywood became a soulless machine of adaptation, sequels, and remakes, there was something called a spec script. It was a script written on speculation that someone might want to buy it. And back then, since movies had original stories, somebody probably would. This was how unknown screenwriters could make themselves known to studios. Write a script, shop it out, and sell it for tons of cash. One such movie was the 1992 film Stay Tuned. It started as a spec script in 1990, where two unknown screenwriters wanted to make a story that mixed The Evil Dead and Monty Python. What resulted was a film about a suburban couple who get isekai'd into their TV by the devil. In 1990, Warner Brothers bought the spec script for $750,000. Suddenly, the unknown screenwriters weren't so unknown anymore. And hey, Joffe was hiring. The pair was Jim Genowine and Tom S. Parker. In the future, they'll write the 1994 films The Flintstones and Richie Rich. But for now, their name was hot enough in Hollywood to land them the gig writing the Super Mario Bros. Genowine and Parker saw the story as a true isekai, a journey into another world just like The Wizard of Oz. Their draft leaned into that, taking the brothers through a warp pipe into the Mushroom Kingdom full of game references. In their own words, essentially what we did was what Shrek did, only we did it before Shrek. In addition to the plot, their draft was also about the mending of a broken relationship between the brothers. They wrote the draft in 4 weeks, and both Nintendo and Joffe loved it. Here, with a quick summary, is me. The opening to the second draft is already familiar. Dark shapes running from darker shapes through the rainy New York streets, passing an infant and a magical artifact onto the church steps like it's the end zone on the superb Owl Weekend. The artifact falls into the drain immediately because are you kidding me? From then on it's all scrapped material. With it being New York and Italian and all, the Mario brothers are in debt to the mob. Mario tries his damnedest to raise the dough, but Luigi keeps taking free jobs and handing out money to homeless people. Typical Luigi, am I right? Mario is frankly an unsympathetic prick whose fiancée left him before the wedding, and I don't blame her. He takes his frustration out on his younger, let's say, distracted brother. Still a little Rain Man creeping in there, but it's explained away as Luigi being all lovesick. His love interest's name is Hildy for some god-awful reason. She's a princess but don't know it. Koopa stops by her place and holy hell is he scary. He's described as a stiff and artificial man with wooden movements and mechanical laughter. You can't help but remember the bug from Men in Black, but that sugar water freak won't fly onto the screen for another 4 to 5 years. Speaking of, Ed Solomon wrote Men in Black. We'll see him again in Draft 7. Cue the kidnapping and the car chase, with the Marios chasing Koopa and the mob chasing the Marios. This leads to a miniature restaurant that only serves frog and a big-ass pipe in the floor that slips them into the isekai. Oh damn, this draft has an actual The Mushroom Kingdom. The brothers save Toad, who's a cowardly, backstabbing little thief, and we finally meet the natives of this world, a race called Yeelas. They're being repressed because they didn't vote for Koopa, but Koopa don't care because he has daddy issues. He wants a star to make himself invincible, even though he presumably already won the war because he's in charge of everything. Anyway, now that he's home, the evil wizard transforms him back into his real self, which is a big lizard guy. Hell Yeela. Reason number 9001 that the producer's budget wasn't ever going to let this draft get made. There's a prophecy and a good wizard and a magic quest. Luigi is given 3 silver coins he'll need for the quest, which he immediately gives away to a homeless Yeela on the same page, because this is the greatest script of all time. This draft has a lot of familiar enemies, like Goombas that are just gray Yeelas, so sort of dark elves I guess, and Hammer Bros on armored horses that throw axes. The horses don't throw the axes. There's some good old Mario 3 spike ceilings, and thwomps that curse every time Mario jumps out of the way. Not to mention a raccoon tail, a giant mole, chain chomps, a princess in another castle, and of course, a little dinosaur buddy. His name is Mario Jr. Some other notable scenes include Mario and Luigi in disguise forced to improv karaoke for Koopa, and Toad arguing with himself like Gollum before straight up murdering a guard with a poisonous growth from his own head. God damn, I wish we got this movie. With a solid script in place, again, it was time for Joffe to find a director. Again. His first choice this round, for some reason, was Greg Beeman. 10 years from now, Greg would be brought on to direct the Superman prequel series Smallville, but in the current year of 1991, his only theatrical film was License to Drive, a teen comedy that was a commercial success but had mixed reviews. Maybe he had a nice personality. But in his defense, Greg is certainly the best director that Super Mario Bros. Will ever get. He got to work right away hiring a production team, and together they built out the visuals of the fantasy script by Genuine and Parker. All of those sketches I showed during the summary came from here. They even built a clay model of the Mushroom Kingdom and a concept for a forced perspective set that would give the illusion of infinite hallways. It was never built to scale, and spoiler alert, they destroyed the model. But for now, everything was going great, and everyone was happy. Before joining the Mario movie, Greg Beeman had finished directing his second film, a sci-fi family adventure called Mom and Dad Save the World. It hadn't come out yet, so he held a private screening for the Super Mario's producers, Roland Joffe and Jake Eberts, because that's what artists do to their friends. Now, I've seen a lot of bad movies, and I've seen a lot of movies that made me mad. But I'm not sure I've ever seen one that made me want to fire a director I had just hired to make my own movie after they had led an art department to make such great concept art. I guess Joffe has. To be fair, there was also this thing about money. Being an independent studio, Joffe really didn't have any. He needed cash from distribution companies, and it turns out that none of them wanted to throw money at this thing if Greg Beeman was the one in charge of it. So say goodbye to Greg. And here we are again in 1991 without a director. But all is not lost. Given a bit of luck, Super Mario Bros. Could still be a classic, standing as a template for how to translate the strange world of video games to the familiar world of film. It does have a good script after all. All it really needs is a proper captain to steer its vision. Unfortunately, which is a word that pops up a lot around this production, this will never happen. We've finally reached the point of no return and the end of part 1. because poor tragic Joffy is about to make the unforgivable choice. A decision that will steer this cash cow directly into its own slaughterhouse and make sure that Super Mario Bros. Has next to nothing at all to do with Super Mario Bros. And it's all thanks to an imaginary man named Max.
Hi, both of you. Welcome to Big Time. You want to check these ratings? I seem to have an audience of 2.